Okay, welcome to our first Teaching Tech tip. This is Alan Whitehead from Learning Services with Schmick's Edge, and tonight we're going to focus on using technology to organize student and teacher learning. We're going to focus on a few things in Google, specifically around using Google Drive and calendars for sharing and organizing. And we'll talk about how Google Classroom really streamlines a lot of that and helps to organize it. In addition to that, if we have time, we'll get into a few other key tools like Remind and Google Keep, if we have time to get into that tonight. So I'm going to start off by sharing my screen. All right. So first off, the first thing to talk about in terms of organizing for teachers and students is using Google Drive. If you're not familiar, hopefully you are, but if you've never got there before, it's just drive.google.com and you sign in using your CESD 73 account. If you're in any other Google site, you can use this little 9 square box up here and go to the triangle for Drive to get to it. So when you get to your Drive, you see over on the far left, My Drive, and that's all of your contents of your Drive. Shared with me, recent, those are ones that we'll kind of highlight. Basically, Google Drive is cloud storage, so you, as a teacher account, have unlimited storage on an internet server, Google servers. You can store all sorts of files there. They don't have to just be Google compatible files. You can save PDFs, picture files, movies, Word documents, any Microsoft Office files. You can save those there as well. So some key things for organizing and kind of a workflow when working with students is sharing and folders. So you can see I've got a whole bunch of folders here. To create new ones and really just to organize what you're doing, click on New, and set up a new folder right away. Within those folders, go into those, you can see all sorts of subfolders and files as well. So pretty straightforward with that. If you want to create a new file in that folder, you can decide to create any kind of Google app that's associated with Drive. So I use Drive to manage all of my Google apps like Google Docs, Sheets, Slides. You can see a few other ones there as well. An important thing to consider is sharing folders as well. So if I have this file, this folder, and I want to share it, I'm going to click up here on the little share button. And I can decide, just like if you've used Google Docs and shared files that way, you can decide, do you want to share it person specifically, that's one's name, or you can put in the whole name too. You want to share it with a whole class. Look up school if you know your 4-letter school code. Look up English class. You can see there's English 20-4 at Innisfil High School, taught by Mr. Pino. And that will share this folder with all of the students in that class. Now you can see here's English 20. All the students that are in Mr. Pool's English 20 class would get this email saying that you've got a folder shared with you. And then you can decide what kind of access do you want to give them to a folder. You want to let them edit it, they can change it, add things, take them out, or just let them see what's in there. Whatever you set the folder sharing as, everything in the folder will have those same functions as well. So if you say just view, they can just see what's in there and they can just see the documents that are in there. Also, you can get a shareable link, just like sharing a doc or a sheet or anything like that. So you can actually just give someone the link. You can decide you want to allow them to view or to edit. So that's sharing a folder, just like sharing documents as well. In your shared with me section over here on the left, you're going to have different files that have ever been shared with you. Once you get those, it's a good idea to take that and add it to your actual Drive yourself, so that it's not just in the share with me, but it's in your Drive as well. So to do that, you can either right click on it, or you can click and go up here to the Add to My Drive icon, and that takes it out of this shared with me. Well, actually it'll stay in shared with me, but we'll also put it into your main Drive as well. And that allows you to kind of choose, do you want something to be just in your Drive, or you have some say over what people share with you. Recent is good for being organized too. If you have something you've used recently, it's a quick way to find it again. So that's some quick things with using Google Drive. In a minute, I'll show you how we can use Google Classroom to kind of do a lot of that organizing. If you wanted to use it with a class, you might think about creating a folder for your class, sharing it to the class, and then you can put handouts and things like that in there. So you can create a new folder for, let's say it was that English 20 class, put it up, and then let's share that folder with, share it with this whole group of English students, if that was your class. Then they would have access to it. Anything you put in there, they'll have access to as well. One other quick thing for organization is calendars. If you want to set up a class or school calendar, so when you're in your Google Calendar, again, you can go to that 9 square using that same account, go to calendar. This, you can see my calendar right here as well. These are my calendars. If you go create a new calendar, let's say we wanted to create one for our English 1 class, put a description in, what it's for, and then share this calendar with others. The easiest way to share it is to make this public, but then you have to be aware that anyone can do that. You can then decide what level of detail do you want them to see. You make it public. And right now this is set to just share with those in Chinook's Edge, so they have to be logged in. If you'd rather, you can actually share with each specific person. This would take a little bit longer with the class if you're having to add each single student, and it would be there through their username. So you can go through and find names specifically. If you have to find a student, that could take a while if you don't know their username already. Then you can put in their account and say give them permission to see everything or just see certain things about the calendar. What that sets up is a shared calendar then. So for instance, here's one. I can toggle that on, and just look at that shared calendar, turn off my own. You can see this calendar doesn't have anything in it. Turn that one on. So I can turn that one on and off. Okay, so that's setting up a shared calendar quickly. And Google Classroom is something that brings it all together in terms of sharing and setting up that paperless classroom format for teachers and students. It's classroom.google.com. And then if you're on their Google site, you can go to the 9 square, and you'll have to click more here and go to Classroom. Or you can just go to classroom.google.com, sign in with your same @CESD73 account. This is what I see because I have one class I've created. It's really simple to get a new class up and rolling, so we'll go through that process. If I press the plus button, I want to create a class. Remember that it says join class here as well. This is how your students would join a class. They would go to the same site, click the plus button, and join. I'm going to create a class as a teacher. Class. And while that's thinking, what it's going to actually be doing is in the background, in my Google Drive, it's going to work in Google Drive and set up a folder structure in there already for me. So I don't have to go, as I said, with creating this English 21. I go down and find my classroom folder. I'm going to search for it because I've got too many folders. And classroom folder. And this was created automatically once I created a class in Google Drive. See, I've got social studies in there. It doesn't have my English. I haven't finished that yet. So it sets up the whole classroom structure of sharing folders. I'll show you that again in a minute. If you want to add anything, basically Google Classroom works as a stream. This plus button down in the bottom right. It's how you add all sorts of things. So you can create an announcement, which is basically just information. So I'm going to share with the class. I can attach something to that. I can take something on my drive and attach it, put a video link in, any kind of web link. And decide, do I want to share it with more than one class? This is my other class. I can announce across classes as well. If I just hit the X, it doesn't post it, but my draft is saved up here. I go back into it and hit post. Then it will actually post the whole thing in it. So there's an announcement. If I then go and say, let's create an assignment, and call it a, oops. description. Let's set a due date. Or you can turn due dates off if you want to leave it open, maybe for a project or something like that. You can actually set it way down to the time that it's due. You can attach a file. So I went into my drive. I can search for, there's an essay. So I've attached that file. Now I can decide, do I want students just to be able to view that file that I'm attaching? Maybe it's the instructions for the assignment. Or do I want them to be able to edit the file? And that would allow them to actually change the document that I'm sharing. Or this is probably more useful for this type of assignment. I want to add one and have them, once they grab it off the site, and make a copy for each student. And this would allow them to get an exact copy of what I'm putting on there. They can edit it on their own and then submit it back to you. So for a writing assignment, that would be the ideal one, because then they get their own copy and do their own writing. So I'm going to assign that. Now I'm back in my drive. You can see it's created an English 20-1 period 1 folder. I didn't go create this folder, it's done it automatically for me in the classroom folder. And now everything that I post, every assignment, it creates a folder as well. So I've got this essay folder, all from creating it on the site. Once students go onto here, they can come here, grab a copy. It does the same thing in their drive. It creates a drive folder structure. They'll have an English 20-1 or whatever class you call it. They'll have that folder in their drive. Every assignment they will get, it'll make a copy and put that into their drive. They can work on it there. Then they come back to the site and they submit it. Once they submit it, as the teacher, I would have their assignment in this drive. I'll show you an example from my other class. So these are all submitted assignments that students submitted back. It keeps the name I gave it, puts the date, and it puts the student name in it for them. So they don't have to worry about renaming it and having the proper naming features and all those sorts of things. It does that all for you. You can post all sorts of assignments. It doesn't have to be a writing assignment. You could put in a Google form if you want to put quizzes up there or any kind of formative assessment. You can just even just do a question. Instead of creating assignment, go create question and say, something that's English 20. You have a description, you can put a due date in there again. Post that. Now, it says, do you want to allow students to edit their answers after they post? And do you want to allow them to see others' answers or just be able to see their own? So it depends if you want to have it be a bit of a discussion sort of process as well. The students can go in here and write a comment in below, write their answer in. As a teacher, you can go back using these three little buttons here, or three little dots. If you want to edit an assignment, you can always go back and edit, post, delete it, then get rid of it. See the stream as you post new things, it pushes everything down. So if you want something to stay at the top, you can move it up. That sort of thing. Or you can reuse a post. So you can say, this is useful if you post in another class that you want to do the same kind of post in this class, you can go get it out of that other class. So here's my social studies 20 class I have. I could grab this quiz, reuse it, it'll bring everything over into this one. Change it still. There you go. Now just quickly one last thing with Google Classroom. There's certainly more we can get into, but adding students is an important piece. This class code will allow students to go in, press the plus button, and just add that code and join the class with their account. So that's the easiest way to get students to join, is just give them this class code, tell them to go to classroom.google.com, click on the plus button at the top, write that code in, they're automatically enrolled. Or you can go to students and you can invite them yourself. Again, that might take a little bit more time, but it's a process you could go through if you feel like that would be better. Once you have students within, you can set some of the, I'll show you another class where I have students. For another class, if I go to students, I can see who's enrolled. I could remove them from the class. I can send them an email. And muting them, it doesn't allow them to say anything, to post anything. Students can post comments on the stream, so that's something you want to be aware of. If you mute them, they won't be able to anymore. Okay, so that's a really quick introduction to Google Classroom for organization. A couple other things I wanted to get into is managing student work with that. So if students have submitted an assignment, I have. So this one has been submitted. You can see here's my students, here's their submissions. I can then mark it as done or not done, and I can send it back to them as well, or open it up from here and read it, go through it. If you want, you can keep grades in Classroom as well. You can give them a grade, send a message about that. And this return button, you can say this one's been done, return that assignment to them. And you can set the scale for grades as well. So that was under an assignment. There's instructions. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to touch on is a tool called Remind. Some of you might have used it already or seen it or heard of it, called Remind 101. They've dropped the 101 and it's short for just remind.com. It's a great, simple tool for sending messages to colleagues, students, and parents. You can sign up for free and you can log in using your Google account as well. Go to remind.com, click on login, and you can see here you just click login with Google, and this will associate the Remind account with your Google account, your @CESD73 account. Because I'm already logged into my @CESD73 account, clicking that's all I needed to do. There's my account. So really simple interface. This is just a test class that I set up, but you can create new ones by pressing the Appear in Classes plus button. Create a new class, give it a name. So if I say code, somebody's already using that, so you have to come up with your own. And you can allow anyone to start a chat, or you can be the one who starts the chat. So I'm going to test one here. Any announcement I type, that will send it out to those that are in the class. I don't have any participants right now, but if you want to add people, invite your class. A couple easy ways you can do this. You can tell them to enter this number. Students and parents use this number to join their class. They then will get text messages for whatever you write in as an announcement. And you can get them to text or receive messages from me, whatever that you put into the announcements. So this would actually go out as a text message to your students, to parents, whoever joins. If you press this download PDF instructions, it gives you a sheet you can print out with your code on it. So you print this out. It says this person is wanting you to join Remind. If they go and enter this number, send a message, this message in a text, and then on they will get messages. Or if they want to get them via email, they could just go and follow the instructions there and they can receive your announcements through email. It's an easy way to send out messages, to be in touch with students and parents. You can also join a class if you want to be in someone else's. You include items, you attach files in there. Be aware that people are receiving these as text messages that might not come through very well. And then some of the class settings, you can go back and change those if you like. You can change who the owner is as well. So if you want to add a teacher or turn a class over to a teacher, you can do that. That's a quick thing for kind of organizing and get messages out. Another couple quick things. One is Google Keep, talking about notes and reminders and keeping organized. This is another Google app that works through your @CESD account. You can see I'm logged in already. You can find Keep again through, I just had to add that, but you can find it in the 9 square, or you can go to keep.google.com. Is the website and log in if you're @CESD account. Basically, I think of this like sticky notes, but digitally. So you can create a new note, title it, there's a number of things you can do. You can set it as a reminder if you want it to pop up at a certain time. You pick your own time. You can invite other people. You can share this with one other person or a class. Or you can find a specific person. I'm not sure if some staff names. You can give it a color coding. Add an image. Put an image you want to post in there as well. You can have it show checkboxes if you have different done. Oh, and one other thing I should mention too is adding a label. Adding labels allows you to organize it. You can see now it's put these two little labels on there. Why that's handy is right now I'm looking at all my lists that I've ever made. I can go into them, I can edit them, check things off. As I go, this is a reminder that was set. Take a look at that. And if I go up here on the left, under notes, you can see just the ones that are reminders. If I click on that, I can change my view to see here's the reminder that's set. I just created. Or I can go into these labels and see just the ones I've labeled with that one. So you can organize that way. If you have a note you don't need anymore, like custom, you can archive it. Basically get rid of it too. Okay. So that's a quick one just for creating notes. The nice thing, why this is a little bit different than just creating your own note, is that you can share it and you can label it. So for organization, if you end up with a lot of notes, it might be handy to use the search button up here as well. If you're looking for a specific note, you can't remember what I titled it, you can search to see what comes up. And search always works really great with Google. And one last thing I wanted to touch on was for tonight was creating an interactive course outline. So I've created one here already and just walk through the steps. Basically what's interactive about it, if this is a sample course outline, is that I can move pages and then clicking on this section of this interactive piece and the table of contents will take you to that section. So it's a nice thing to have in a digital, if you have a class that's paperless, and to be able to have students use it as it's an interactive web document. How I created that is basically just using the titles and headings buttons up here. So when I created my overall title, I made sure I had title selected when I wrote that. Then everything else, I use the heading buttons. So this one is heading 1. This one, these ones afterwards, subheadings are heading 2. And likewise, then this becomes heading 1, heading 2. So what that does is when I create my table of contents, this is heading 1, these are heading 2s. Oops. And the way I do that, once you've created that, it's good. I didn't have my table of contents yet, and I wanted to add a new one in. I put my cursor where I'd like to have that table of contents. Go to Insert, Table of Contents, and it just takes a look and says, okay, here's where heading 1 or heading 2 were used, and sets up the path of links. You can click on the link and go to the location. So that's it for tonight. I hope I didn't forget anything in terms of helping you organize for student learning and for teachers in the classroom, moving towards maybe more of a paperless environment with teaching. If you have any questions or any topics you'd like to discuss more, or maybe for a future time together in a teaching tech session, please send me an email, alwhitehead@cesd73.ca. Thanks a lot, and have a good night.